Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a game that defies a lot of description. I would call it a time travel mystery problem-solving crime game. And that game is Tragedy Looper. This is a game that was released, I believe, at Gen Con last year. I've had it for a while, and unfortunately, it's taken me a while to get my thoughts together on it, but I finally have, and would like to talk about it in this video. So basically, you're not going to see a whole lot of description of what actually happens in the game. You're going to get a general outline of rules, and then I'll come back here at the end and discuss my feelings on Tragedy Looper as a whole. So catch you after the video. So here you can see Tragedy Looper all set up. Now this is going to be an incredibly vague review because this game relies entirely upon not really knowing, at least for more than half of the players, not really knowing what's going on in a scenario. One player, the mastermind, will know everything about the scenario, whereas the other 1, 2, or 3 players, depending on how many you're playing, will have really no idea what's going on, but they're going to be trying to figure out what the plot of the scenario is. So the plot can be many different things. In the basic first step setup, it could be a murder plan, or it could be Light of the Avenger, or a place to protect. And in the basic scenarios, there's a lot more of these. So there's a lot of scenarios or main plots, and then there will be a subplot as well that you must figure out. So it could be any of these things in the first steps, and any of these in the more advanced scenario. So this sheet kind of outlines all of the plots and subplots, along with what roles for each of the characters exist in those plots, and basically what special abilities the mastermind might have, or what special rules might exist within that plot, so you can help figure out what you're doing, because that's the whole objective. The players are trying to survive one loop of this time travel scenario, or if they're unable to survive the loops of the time travel scenario, they're going to try and at the end figure out what the plot and subplot are in order to figure out the roles of every character in the scenario. So right now, what we're looking at here is the setup for the very, very first basic, or I guess they call it first step scenario, where there's one plot and one subplot, whereas usually there'd be one plot and 2 subplots. Now in this, you're looking at a little board over here to keep track of time, basically. As I said, this is going to be a looping type of game. So each player, or the players in total, are going to be playing out the same scenario in repeat over several loops. And this scenario in particular says that the scenario is 4 days long, that you can play with either 2 or 3 time loops. So right now, we have it set that there are 3 loops, which is the easier version. If we wanted to make it harder, they'd start at 2 loops. Now, with 3 loops, there are 4 days in these loops, and the scenario says that on day 2, there's a murder, and day 3, there's a suicide. That's all we know. That doesn't mean we know the plot, doesn't mean we know the subplot. We know nothing at this point. But we have 4 days to figure it out in the first loop. In day 2, we know something will happen, and that is a murder. And in day 4, we know something will happen, or sorry, 3, we'll move that back, we know something will happen, a suicide. So if we get to day 2, and all of the conditions are right, a murder will happen. If we get to day 3 and all of the conditions are right, a suicide will happen, and either one of those would end our loop, and we would start back over. Alternatively, we make it to day 4. If we make it to day 4, we win. Nothing has happened, all is well, players win the game. If at any time this happens, we reset the loop. If one of these events happens and it triggers the end of a loop, the loop will reset. We'll go down to the next loop, and everything on this board restarts over from the very beginning, but now you have more information. Something you did triggered the end of a loop, and you need to figure out what, avoid it, and hopefully get further along, and use the information you got to try and figure out who these characters are. So basically, you're going to keep repeating the same scenario over and over until you reach the maximum number of loops, and if you failed at that point, you still have an extra chance to guess who everyone in the scenario is, what their role is, and win the game. Now, how are you going to play? Well, each round is broken down into several steps. They're actually laid out on the board here. So the first is morning. There's the start of the day, and some things happen at the start of the day. There's keywords that trigger then. You use them. They happen. After that, you move on to playing cards, and the mastermind is going to choose 3 cards from his deck. So the mastermind will have a deck of cards, and he knows from a little book that he has what his goals are going to be. So he has the Mastermind's Handbook, and he's going to be looking at how he can make the loop end. So he's going to be picking cards from this deck. It could be to add intrigue to a character or a place. He would place this card onto one of these characters, and when they're revealed, it might add 1 intrigue token to him. Intrigue tokens are these little tokens over here. Adding them to a character is going to allow that character, if they have a special role, to potentially use it once they've gained enough of this intrigue. Or it could be that, for example, you need to have enough intrigue on someone else in order for a special character to affect that player. So you'll be adding this intrigue to players that you want to target, or sometimes you might be adding it to the characters just because you're trying to throw off the other players. It could be that you play a movement card. You'll see we have movement cards. This one is move diagonally, but there are also move horizontally and vertically cards. So it could be any of these movement cards. You'll see that if multiple movement cards get played on somebody, they might affect the movement. So a horizontal and a vertical will turn into a diagonal, whereas a diagonal and a vertical turn into a horizontal. This will happen when the players that the Mastermind is playing against, play their cards on the same character, affecting the movement. So we also have an Intrigue +2. This little icon here means that it may only be used once per time loop, so you won't get this card back if you use it. You also have a couple of forbidding cards. You may forbid Goodwill. We'll talk about Goodwill in a little bit, but if somebody else plays a Goodwill card on something, this would cancel it out. You may also forbid Paranoia. Likewise, cancels Paranoia if somebody else plays a plus or minus Paranoia card on something. So, the last cards we have are plus and minus Paranoia. Paranoia is going to be these little tokens here, and Paranoia is going to be what you need in order to trigger those scenario-specific events we talked about earlier. For example, this murder will require that somebody has Paranoia on them, and probably some other conditions as well in order for that to take place. Same thing for the suicide. You must have the tokens on somebody in order for that to trigger. And it may be that there are other needs for Paranoia out on the board as well. So the Mastermind will play 3 of his cards to 3 different locations, and the other players will be playing their cards. So they have very similar cards. They have plus Goodwill and Paranoia, movement, forbidding Intrigue, forbidding movement, which do exactly what they sound like, but Goodwill is the one we really need to talk about. Goodwill will allow them to add these little tokens to the character that Goodwill is played on. Each character has little heart icons on their card. Let's take a look at the girl student, for example. She shows 2 heart icons on her card, and once she has 2 Goodwill, she says that she may remove 1 Paranoia from any other student in this location. So if the boy student has Paranoia, she can pull the Paranoia off of him. Given that type of time in the round, she can use this Goodwill without losing it to use that ability. Assuming that the Mastermind allows that to happen if this girl doesn't have a role that allows him to stop it, which of course would be hidden information that he has. So you can add that Goodwill, but essentially the Mastermind will play 3 cards. The players will play 1 card each, not allowing their cards to overlap, but they may overlap with the Masterminds, and once that's done, they're going to move on. This will move on to resolving the cards, and then after that, there are abilities that might happen. So, if the Mastermind has any secret abilities he'd like to use, he may do so. Likewise, the leader of the group, and one player would have a leader card right here, indicating that they're the leader of the other players, would have the ability to use any Goodwill abilities out on these cards. Once we're done with that, if there are any incidents planned for the day, you would check and see if they happen. If they do happen, the loop's going to end. You'll restart the loop and reset everything to stock. Finally, if that did not happen, you'll move on to night, which will allow you to change the leader, end the round, and start the next day. And you'll continue in this manner until either the loop ends or they make it all the way through that loop. Now, it's not always true that having an incident happen will end the loop. It could be that the incident doesn't involve somebody that's important to the scenario, and that will not end the loop. The loops will end if all of the protagonists die, so if somehow we kill off all of our characters in the game, then the loop's going to end. Otherwise, there are conditions within the Mastermind scenario that will indicate when a loop might end. So just know that it's not necessarily true that having an incident happen will end the scenario, or end the loop, I should say. So there's various other ways. So those incidents can theoretically trigger trigger but be avoided. And it might be that, for example, somebody's supposed to be murdered, but they weren't because they weren't together with the person. Despite the fact that the conditions were right for it to happen, they just weren't in the same vicinity and nothing happened. So there is possibility that you can move beyond the incidences without ending a loop, or that an incident might happen and a loop may not end because of it. So that's all going to be on the side of the mastermind, and only one player will know. But regardless, the players against the mastermind are trying to make it either all the way through one loop, so in this case 4 days, without having it end prematurely, or make it all the way to the end of the game and guess the role of everyone in the game. Each of these characters will have some type of secret role. Otherwise, the mastermind's trying to end every loop, all 3 loops in this case, prematurely, and at the end of the game, not have the players know the role of everyone else. And if they can happen to do that, make it all the way through all 3 loops without the players having guessed the role of everyone, the mastermind wins, and they will be the winner of Tragedy Looper. And there you have it. That is Tragedy Looper from Z-Man Games. This one, as I said earlier, is a little bit hard to wrap your head around. One player, I think, kind of has to be the expert in the game. That player is going to have to be the mastermind most of the time, especially if you play with a lot of new groups, which I have a tendency to do. Now, with that said, I even suggest with that player who's the mastermind that they run the first scenario a couple of times for different groups before they really get into the game, because that first scenario is really a great outline to how the game works, will help you wrap your head around how to explain the game to other people, and we really give you a chance to learn how to play. Now, the game is brilliant, in my opinion. Easily, probably my vote for innovative game of 2014. Simply because it combines several aspects of different games that I like. So it's got deduction game in there, clearly, and it's mostly a deduction game. So you've got things kind of like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, where you're trying to figure out what's going on with various different characters. At the same time, you have kind of the spatial aspect of moving around, trying to make sure that you're in the right or wrong places, dependent on if you're the mastermind or one of the other characters in the game. So you've got that aspect. You've got the kind of poker face type thing going on that you have, of course, in poker, where you're trying to bluff and or deduce what the other player might do in the play of their cards. And then you have the kind of recording aspect, something like, I'm going to forget the name of it now, but it's a Sid Saxon game with gems, where you need to record, or alchemists for that matter, where you need to kind of mentally or physically record information about each of the people in that scenario in order to try and figure out who they are, which might lead you to figure out the plot and the subplot. So there's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of things for the mastermind and for the other players to keep track of, different abilities, different interactions between characters, and even sometimes a character's role may be superseded by them being the culprit in another incident within the game. So there's some confusing aspects there, but with careful paying attention, just some care and paying attention to detail, I think you can be okay in figuring out what's going on. It's going to be challenging, and there are different skill levels based on the number of loops that you allow the players to have. So there's definitely scaling that's available there as well. So overall, just super innovative, a lot of really cool time travel-y, deduction stuff going on. And if that is appealing to you all, take the time to sit down, really learn the game. I think it provides a great experience that you'll really enjoy. That's Tragedy Looper from Z-Man Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.